He'd worked for 3 years to make sure she'd never be in this room. He'd changed the company filings. He'd scrubbed her name from the presentations. He'd introduced Tina to every investor, every journalist, every person who mattered, and smiled the smile of a man who had edited his own history and gotten away with it. And tonight, the night of the Harrington Grand Gala, the night the $120 million Series D was announced, the night he finally stood at the absolute peak of everything, he was going to be right. Cole Weston raised his champagne toward his reflection in the ballroom mirror. He was untouchable. Then the doors opened. Riley James walked in wearing a midnight blue gown that moved like water and carried a silence that commanded the room the way only the truth can. Cole's champagne stopped mid-toast. And Andrei Volkov, the man whose $120 million check had made Cole a legend that very morning, turned away from the senator he was speaking to and walked directly, without hesitation, toward Riley. Not toward Cole. The man who owned the deal walked toward the woman who owned the work. Cole had spent 3 years writing her out of the story. Tonight, she was the headline. Cole Weston was the kind of man who knew how to wear a tuxedo and a lie with equal confidence. As CEO of Weston Dynamics, a high-growth tech firm that had become the darling of the venture capital world, he had cultivated an image of brilliant, self-made innovation. He was handsome, camera-ready handsome, the kind that made venture capitalists lean in a little closer during pitches. Magnetic. Utterly convinced that the story he told about himself was the only one that mattered. Tonight, he had Tina on his arm. She was gleaming in a white gown, selected partly for love, partly for optics, and largely because she fit the aesthetic of the life Cole had always believed he deserved. She looked at him the way women looked at men who'd already won. She didn't know the game was still being played. At the Harrington Grand Gala, his industry's most prestigious annual event, Cole stood at the center of a ballroom lit by 1,000 tiny lights, his tailored jacket bearing a feature profile from Prestige Tech magazine in the inner pocket. The piece was titled The Visionary, How Cole Weston Engineered the Future. It didn't mention Riley James once. What the gala did not know, what Cole had spent 3 years ensuring no one knew, was that the proprietary design intelligence platform powering Weston Dynamics was not born in any boardroom or development lab. It was born at 1 a.m. in a rented studio apartment, drawn in dry erase marker on a bathroom mirror by a woman named Riley James. Riley had been his partner in every sense that mattered. Creative collaborator. The person who understood his vision before he'd fully articulated it. Co-founder in everything but the title that would have complicated the exit strategy he was already planning. She was the architect. He was the politician. And when her usefulness to his ambition ended and Tina's decorative value began, he'd simply left. The divorce settlement had been swift, merciless in its speed. Riley's lawyer told her the intellectual property had been filed under the company's name before the ink was dry on their wedding certificate. She'd been credited only as a consultant in all the official filings. Fighting it, her lawyer said, would cost more than she'd win. The legal system was not designed to protect people like Riley. Riley had signed the papers. But before she did, she buried one provision in the final settlement agreement. 7 lines of language, so technical and dry that Cole's counsel had stamped past it without stopping, the way you don't read the terms you're certain don't apply to you. The clause entitled Riley to 22% contingent equity activation upon any Series D investment or acquisition event exceeding $80 million. The company wasn't worth a fraction of that the day they signed. It had been a prayer folded into legal language, a bet on the future, on Cole's ambition, on the fact that he wouldn't be able to stop himself. 3 years later, she'd been right. Part 2. The Reverse Engineer. Andrei Volkov was not a man who moved quickly without purpose. He built his fortune on precision, on looking at complicated systems and finding the single elegant truth hidden inside them. When he'd begun his due diligence on Weston Dynamics, he'd done what most investors didn't. He'd actually looked. He'd reverse-engineered the platform from the ground up. He'd traced every function, every algorithm, every moment of what he could only describe as artistic genius. And what he found didn't match the narrative. The architecture was too elegant, too intuitive, too specifically brilliant to match the profile of the man presenting it. Andre had requested the original development files. His legal team found them buried deep in Western Dynamics servers, the ones Cole probably thought had been scrubbed clean. They found Riley's name on every foundational document. Her notations, her innovations, her fingerprints on every single elegant line. There was a very sloppy cleanup of the earlier files, but digital archaeology never lies. When Andre's legal team briefed him on Section 9, subsection D of Riley's settlement agreement, he read it twice. Then, he picked up the phone. "Miss James," he said when she answered. His accent was crisp, certain. "I've been looking at your work." "Most people look at Cole's work," Riley replied. Her voice was steady. It was the voice of someone who'd spent 3 years waiting. "Most people aren't looking closely enough," Andre said. He proceeded with the Series D, not despite the clause, but aware of it. More than aware, deliberate about it. He timed the paperwork filing for the morning of the Harrington Gala. He wanted an audience. Part 3. The Entrance. Riley James was early to mid-30s, the kind of woman whose intelligence arrived before she did. Her natural hair was pinned up tonight, the kind of deliberate choice that announced she wasn't here to blend in. Earrings caught the chandelier light as she moved through the gala's entrance. Her posture was perfect, not the anxious perfection of someone trying to belong, but the certainty of someone who'd been underestimated too many times to be surprised by it anymore. She spoke precisely, and only when precision mattered. She had spent 3 years practicing this moment. 3 years waiting in silence. 3 years knowing exactly what she'd built while the world credited someone else for it. Rose, her best friend since college, walked beside her in a burgundy gown, a silent statement of solidarity. "You good?" Rose asked. Riley's eyes swept the ballroom. She found Cole immediately. He was the magnetic center of the room, exactly where he always needed to be. Then she found Andre across the space, watching the room with the quiet calculation of a man who always got what he wanted. "I've been ready," Riley said. She carried herself into that room like someone walking into a space she'd already owned for 3 years. Because she had. Every elegant line of the platform, every intuitive function, every algorithm that made it feel less like code and more like genius, that was hers. The room just didn't know it yet. Andre saw her the moment she crossed the threshold. He was mid-conversation with the senator, but mid-sentence became irrelevant. He excused himself with a smile that wasn't quite an apology and walked directly toward Riley. Cole's champagne stopped mid-toast. Part 4. The conversation Cole cannot control. Cole crossed the ballroom with his professional smile engaged, the one that had convinced investors and journalists alike that he was a visionary. He extended his hand toward Andre with the ease of a man accustomed to having his hand taken. "An incredible morning," Cole said. "The investors are energized, the platform is exceeding projections, and—" Andre looked at his hand. "I came to speak with Ms. James." The hand hung in the air for a moment before Cole lowered it slowly. He shifted his attention to Riley instead, seamlessly pivoting into the warm, familiar tone of a man greeting someone he'd once loved, before love became inconvenient. "I didn't know you'd be here," Cole said. You look wonderful." Riley was perfectly composed. Not cold. Not angry. Just precise. "Thank you. Congratulations on the Series D." She paused. Just enough space for the next sentence to land harder. "Your investors made an excellent decision." The words were polite. The weight behind them was not. Tina was holding Cole's arm now, still smiling, still in the part of the evening where she didn't yet understand that her entire night was about to pivot. She squeezed his arm, a gesture of support that had already become tragic in its innocence. Riley was foundational in the early development, Cole said quickly, trying to reclaim the narrative before it escaped him entirely. "I've always valued her contributions to the foundational concepts of—" "You've never said that publicly," Andre interrupted quietly. "That's actually the problem." Rose appeared beside Riley with 2 glasses of champagne and a single greeting. "Hello, Cole." She said nothing else. She didn't need to. The power in the room had already shifted. Cole was performing. Riley was simply present. The ballroom had begun to notice. The invisible thread connecting power, that thing that normally attached itself to Cole, had started to fray. Part 5. The platform revealed. The Harrington Gala's grand hall fell silent when Andre stepped to the podium. He was not a man who needed the room's permission. He had money, intelligence, and a sense of justice that had calcified into something beautiful and terrifying. He looked out at the assembled tech elite, the investors who'd funded Cole, the journalists who'd canonized him, the venture capitalists who'd made a mythology out of a lie. "Good evening," Andre said. His accent cut through the silence like a blade. "I believe in correcting errors when I find them. And I found a significant one." The screens behind him came alive. Riley's original development files scrolled across every display in the ballroom. Her name on the architecture. Her formulas on the early builds. Her bathroom mirror diagrams, photographed years ago before they were erased, recovered from backup servers that Cole had somehow forgotten to sanitize completely, showing the elegant, impossible work of the actual genius. Code after code after code. Innovation after innovation. The digital fingerprints of a woman writing a revolution on borrowed time in a borrowed apartment. "I came here tonight to invest in Weston Dynamics," Andre continued, his voice steady and certain. "And I did. Significant capital. Significant belief in the platform." He paused. "But I did my due diligence properly. I reverse-engineered the platform architecture. I traced every function, every algorithm, every moment of pure brilliance. And what I found was interesting. The signature isn't Cole Weston's. It's Riley James." The room erupted in murmurs. Cole's face had gone the color of old paper. Tina's hand fell from his arm. "My investment this morning," Andre continued, "triggered a specific clause in Ms. James' divorce settlement agreement. A clause that was buried in technical language, so dry that even Cole's legal team missed it. Section 9, subsection D. They read right past it." He smiled without warmth. But it was ironclad. Drafted by a woman who was about to be cheated and had the foresight to protect herself. In the third row, Trisha, Cole's attorney, the woman who'd advised him to fight harder, but also the woman who'd stamped past that clause without reading it, felt her stomach drop. She remembered. 7 lines of language. She'd flagged it as standard boilerplate. Her junior had said it didn't apply. "As of this morning," Andre said, "Riley James holds 22% equity in Weston Dynamics, making her the second largest individual shareholder. Not the consultant. Not the early collaborator. The actual architect. The actual genius." Andre stepped down from the podium and walked directly to Riley. The kiss was brief and deliberate, witnessed by everyone in the room. It was not a romantic gesture, though it contained tenderness. It was a coronation. To Riley, quietly enough that only she and the nearest witnesses heard, this moment was 3 years late. Cole's voice rose, breaking. "This isn't you can't just, that clause is not legally." 3 law firms reviewed it, Andre said without turning from Riley. His voice could have been discussing the weather. "It's ironclad. Your own attorney signed it because your company was worth nothing the day she did." The room that had been designed to celebrate Cole's story became the room where Riley's was told instead. Part 6, the correction. Riley stepped to the microphone with the same quiet certainty she'd carried through the ballroom door. The room held its breath. "I didn't come here tonight for revenge," she said. Her voice was precise, measured. The voice of someone who'd rehearsed this moment, but not obsessively. "I came because Andre told me I deserved to be in the room where my work was celebrated. He was right." She looked out at the crowd. All of them. The journalists who'd written Cole's mythology. The investors who'd bet on his fiction. The venture capitalists who'd turned him into a legend. That platform, Riley continued, every elegant line of it, every impossible algorithm, every moment of intuitive brilliance, that was mine. My work. My innovation. My architecture. She paused. Let the words settle like truth always does, heavy and immovable. "I designed it. I built it. I perfected it. At 1 a.m. in an apartment I could barely afford, on a bathroom mirror because we couldn't afford the equipment yet. Her voice didn't shake. From this night forward, she said, the record reflects that. My name is on the patents. My equity is active. And the industry knows who built what. That's all I ever wanted. Not his destruction. His correction. Cole was reaching for Trisha, for someone, for any lifeline. Trisha wouldn't meet his eyes. Part 7. The terms. The terms were delivered with surgical precision. Riley, standing beside Andre, spoke the ultimatum clearly enough that everyone in the ballroom heard it. Sign the restructuring agreement by morning, or every tech platform in the industry runs a story. Not my version. Not a narrative. The documented, verified truth. Cole looked at Trisha. Trisha had nothing to give him. She was already working her phone, already calling her senior partners, already beginning the work of damage control for herself and her firm. Cole signed by 11 p.m. Tina left the gala separately, quietly. Not with drama. Not with tears in the photojournalist's flash. Just with questions that would take time to answer, and the understated understanding that the man she'd married was not the man she'd thought she was married to. She was already mentally dividing the assets. Part 8. The final exchange. As Riley passed Cole in the corridor leading away from the ballroom, he grabbed her wrist gently. Not violent. Just desperate. When did you know? He asked. His voice cracked slightly on the question. That it would work? Riley considered him carefully, as if he were a particularly complicated piece of code. The day I designed it, I always build to last. No. Cole's voice was barely audible. When did you know you'd get it back? Riley smiled, not with cruelty, but with the certainty of someone who had played a longer game. A smarter game. A game Cole had never even realized he was losing. The day I planted the clause, she said. I bet on myself, Cole. I always planned to win. I just planned smarter than you planned to erase me. She pulled her wrist free gently. Not with anger. With finality. The exit. Outside, Rose linked her arm through Riley's as they walked toward the waiting car. The Harrington Gala glittered behind them, the ballroom lights cascading through the glass doors. That's 3 years of waiting, Rose said. Worth every minute, Riley replied. She looked up at the gala's lights one final time, at the ballroom where Cole had thought himself untouchable, where the lie had been built, where it had finally been corrected. The space where she'd been written out of the story and had rewritten herself back in, not through revenge, but through truth. Then she looked forward. The car was waiting. Andre held the door. She got in without looking back. She had never needed an invitation to rooms she helped build. Tonight, she had rewritten who belonged in them entirely. The moral. Cole Weston confused delivery with creation. He thought that because he carried the work through the door, he built the door. He thought that because Riley stayed quiet, she was finished. He confused her patience for acceptance, her grace for defeat, and her silence for surrender. She didn't leave a wound. She left a clause. He signed it. And she had never needed an invitation to rooms she helped build, because she'd already arranged to own the deed.